The Dragon Emperor Velrisa had ruled the Crimson Expanse for longer than most civilizations had existed. Her scales gleamed like captured starlight, shifting between gold and crimson depending on her mood. She was ancient, powerful, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who had the misfortune of crossing her path. For thousands of years, no being in the known universe dared to question her authority or challenge her decisions. Then came the humans. Captain Rebecca Hayes wasn't looking for trouble when her small exploration vessel, the Wanderer, picked up a strange signal near the edge of Dragon territory. She was a seasoned explorer, someone who had seen her fair share of weird things in the depths of space, but this signal was different. It pulsed with an irregular pattern, almost like a heartbeat that was struggling to keep going. Her co-pilot, Tom Rodriguez, urged her to ignore it. Dragon space wasn't somewhere humans casually wandered into. The dragons had made it very clear that trespassers wouldn't be tolerated. But Rebecca had a rule she lived by: never ignore a distress signal. It went against everything she believed in as an explorer and as a human being. Against her crew's better judgment, she followed the signal to a debris field floating in the darkness. What was left of a small cargo ship drifted among twisted metal and shattered crystals. Whatever had destroyed it had done so with extreme prejudice. Scorch marks suggested dragon fire, the kind that burned hot enough to melt titanium. That's when her scanner picked up the life sign. It was faint, barely registering, and tucked inside a damaged cargo pod that was somehow still intact. Rebecca suited up and went out herself, floating through the wreckage with her magnetic boots clicking against torn hull plates. When she pried open the cargo pod, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a baby dragon. But not like any dragon she'd ever seen in the database files. This one was small, about the size of a large cat, with scales that couldn't seem to decide what color they wanted to be. One moment they were blue, the next green, then a color that didn't seem to exist in normal space. The creature had 6 eyes instead of the usual 2, and they kept opening and closing in patterns that made Rebecca's head hurt if she looked too long. The little dragon was dying. Its breathing was shallow and irregular. Its tiny body convulsed every few seconds, like it was fighting against reality itself just to exist. Strange energy rippled across its scales, unstable and chaotic. Rebecca's training told her to leave it. Dragons were apex predators, even as babies. This one was clearly deformed, possibly dangerous, and definitely not her problem. Getting involved with dragon affairs was a death sentence for humans. But when those 6 strange eyes focused on her, Rebecca saw something she recognized. Fear. Pain. Loneliness. The same look her daughter had given her years ago when she was sick with the colony fever, right before Rebecca lost her. She couldn't do it. She couldn't just leave this creature here to die alone in the cold darkness of space. Rebecca carefully lifted the hatchling, surprised by how light it was, and brought it back to the Wanderer. Her crew thought she'd lost her mind. Tom argued with her for 20 minutes straight, pointing out all the ways this would get them killed. Their engineer, Lisa Park, refused to even look at the creature. But Rebecca was stubborn. She took the dragon to their small medical bay and set up a quantum stabilization field, the kind they used for patients with dimensional sickness. She didn't really know if it would work, but she had to try something. The moment the field activated, the dragon's convulsions stopped. Its chaotic colors began to slow down, becoming more rhythmic, more controlled. It made a small chirping sound, like glass bells ringing underwater, and pressed its small head against Rebecca's chest. For the first time in 5 years, since losing her daughter, Rebecca felt something shift inside her heart. This broken, impossible creature needed her. And maybe, just maybe, she needed it too. She named her Spark, because of the way her scales flickered like tiny lightning bolts. For 3 days, things were almost peaceful. Spark grew stronger. She learned to eat the nutrient paste Rebecca mixed for her. She slept curled up in a nest of blankets in Rebecca's quarters. She even started playing, chasing a small ball with clumsy enthusiasm that made the crew smile despite their fears. Then, on the 4th day, every alarm on the ship started screaming at once. Tom's voice cracked over the intercom. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge right now. We've got company. Big company." Rebecca ran to the bridge with Spark clutched to her chest. What she saw through the viewport made her blood run cold. Dragon warships. Dozens of them, surrounding the Wanderer like wolves circling prey. Each one was massive, organic and mechanical merged together, bristling with weapons that could tear their little ship apart in seconds. And in the center of the formation, something even more terrifying materialized. A figure that was too large, too bright, too real to look at directly. Reality seemed to bend around her presence. The Dragon Emperor herself had come. When Velrisa's voice echoed through the ship, 3 of Rebecca's crew members collapsed immediately, their minds unable to process the sheer weight of her presence. Rebecca stayed standing through pure willpower, her arms wrapped protectively around the trembling Spark. "You have something that belongs to me, human." Velrisa's voice made the hull groan and lights flicker. "Return the defective hatchling, and perhaps I will grant you a quick death." Rebecca looked down at Spark, who was shaking but trying to be brave, pressing closer to her for protection. Then she looked up at the being who could erase her existence with a thought. "No," Rebecca said simply. "She's not going back to you." The temperature in the bridge dropped 10 degrees as the Dragon Emperor's rage began to build. The silence that followed Rebecca's refusal was more terrifying than any threat. The Dragon Emperor Velrisa shifted her form, becoming something more solid, more present on the bridge. Her appearance made the air itself seem to crack and shimmer. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that reflected light in ways that shouldn't be possible, with eyes like burning suns that seemed to look straight through Rebecca's soul. "You dare refuse me?" Velrisa's voice was quieter now, but somehow more dangerous. Like the calm before a hurricane. "Do you have any concept of what I am? What I can do to you and everyone on this pathetic vessel?" Rebecca's hands were shaking, but she held Spark tighter. The little dragon made a soft whimpering sound and buried her head against Rebecca's shoulder. "I know exactly what you are. You're the one who threw this baby away to die alone in the cold. That's all I need to know." Tom tried to pull Rebecca back, his face pale with terror. "Captain, please, don't make this worse." But Rebecca couldn't stop. All the grief she'd carried for years, all the helplessness she'd felt watching her daughter slip away, it all came pouring out. "I found her dying. Abandoned in wreckage like garbage. What kind of mother does that?" The temperature dropped even further. Frost started forming on the control panels. Velrisa's form expanded, filling the bridge with her presence, and for a moment Rebecca was certain they were all about to die. Then something unexpected happened. Spark started glowing. Her unstable, flickering colors suddenly blazed with brilliant light, forming a dome of energy around Rebecca and the crew. When Velrisa's rage manifested as actual flames that should have incinerated them all, the shield absorbed it. The fire struck the barrier and simply vanished, like it had never existed. Velrisa froze, her burning eyes going wide with something Rebecca had never expected to see from a dragon. Shock. Pure, complete shock. "Impossible," the Emperor whispered. Her massive form contracted slightly as she leaned closer, staring at Spark with new intensity. "The quantum field. You stabilized her dimensional flux." "How?" Lisa, the engineer, found her voice despite her terror. She'd been monitoring Spark's condition since they brought her aboard. "We didn't know what we were doing, honestly. We just used our standard medical field. It adapts to whatever patient is inside it, adjusts to their unique biology and energy signature." "Adapts," Velrisa repeated the word like it was foreign to her. She moved closer to Rebecca, her movements now curious rather than threatening. "You allowed her nature to exist as it is, rather than forcing her into a fixed state." "I don't understand what that means," Rebecca admitted, though she kept her defensive posture. "I just helped her." "That's what you do when someone needs help." The Dragon Emperor was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The rage was gone, replaced by something complicated that Rebecca couldn't quite identify. "Dragon hatchlings are born into specific dimensional frequencies. We exist in fixed states of reality. It is what gives us our power, our stability, our dominance over lesser species." Velrisa gestured toward Spark, who peeked out from Rebecca's arms with her 6 eyes blinking in that strange pattern. She was born wrong. Her frequency shifts constantly, phasing between dimensions. In our nesting grounds, surrounded by dragons locked in their fixed states, her instability was poison. She couldn't feed properly. Couldn't rest. Every moment was agony for her, and she spread that instability to the others around her. Rebecca felt her anger wavering slightly, but she pushed back. "So you just killed her? Threw her away?" "I gave her a clean death," Velrisa said, and now there was definitely something in her voice. "Regret, maybe. Or grief. I placed her in that cargo vessel, sent it far from dragon space, and destroyed it quickly. I thought I was showing mercy. Ending her suffering before it became unbearable." "Except she didn't die," Tom interjected quietly. "No," Velrisa agreed, staring at Spark with an expression that was hard to read. "She did not. The cargo pod's shielding must have protected her from the initial blast. And then you found her." The Emperor's gaze shifted to Rebecca. And you, with your primitive human technology and your stubborn refusal to accept fate, did what an entire empire of dragons could not. You made her stable. You made her thrive. Rebecca looked down at Spark, who was calmer now, her colors settling into a gentle, rhythmic pulse. The little dragon looked back at her with trust and affection that made Rebecca's heart ache. I didn't do anything special. I just took care of her. Like you're supposed to take care of children. Children, Velrisa repeated softly. We do not use that word. We have hatchlings, offspring, progeny. But not children. She was quiet again, and Rebecca could see something working behind those burning eyes. Some internal struggle that had nothing to do with power or dominance. Lisa spoke up again, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. If I can ask, why does your fixed-dimensional state conflict with her shifting one? Theoretically, shouldn't there be some way to accommodate both? Theoretically, Velrisa said with something that might have been bitter amusement. But dragons are ancient, engineer. We are set in our ways. We have been apex predators for millions of years. We do not adapt. We do not change. We are what we are, and anything that does not fit that mold is seen as weakness. That's stupid, Rebecca said bluntly. The crew gasped, but she continued. You're basically saying you're so powerful that you can't handle one baby who's a little different. That's not strength. That's rigidity. That's fear. The bridge went absolutely silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. They all waited for Velrisa to obliterate them for such disrespect. Instead, the Dragon Emperor threw back her head and laughed. It was a sound like mountains crumbling and thunder rolling across endless skies. When she looked back at Rebecca, there was something new in her expression. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. You are either the bravest human I have ever encountered, or the most foolish, Velrisa said. Perhaps both. She looked at Spark again, and this time her expression was unmistakably sad. She wishes to stay with you. I can sense it. She has bonded to you in a way she never bonded to me or her nestmates. Spark chirped softly, and Rebecca somehow understood the feeling behind it. Safety. Love. Home. I will not take her from you, Velrisa said finally. Not yet. But I will observe. I must understand how you accomplished this impossible thing. Your ship will accompany my fleet. You will demonstrate your methods. And we will see if perhaps, after millions of years, dragons can still learn something new. It wasn't exactly freedom, but it wasn't death either. Rebecca nodded slowly, still holding Spark close. The Dragon Emperor began to fade, returning to her flagship. But before she vanished completely, she said one more thing, so quietly that only Rebecca heard it. Thank you for showing her kindness. I wish I had known how. For the next 3 weeks, Rebecca's small ship remained surrounded by the dragon fleet. They weren't prisoners, exactly, but they certainly weren't free to leave. The Wanderer had become something strange and unprecedented. A classroom where the most powerful beings in the galaxy came to watch a human teach them about childcare. It was surreal, to say the least. Dragon scientists materialized on the ship at all hours, observing everything Rebecca did with Spark. They took notes on devices that looked like crystallized light. They asked endless questions in voices that made the crew's teeth ache. And they seemed genuinely baffled by the simplest things. The first major point of confusion came during feeding time. Rebecca had established a routine. Spark ate 4 times a day, small portions of a nutrient mixture that Lisa had helped formulate based on the dragon's biological scans. It wasn't fancy, just basic proteins and minerals suspended in a gel that Spark seemed to enjoy. A dragon observer named Kelthros watched the process with his head tilted in confusion. He was smaller than Velrisa, only about 7 feet tall in his manifested form, with deep blue scales. You feed her on a schedule, he asked. Of course, Rebecca said, wiping a bit of gel from Spark's snout. The little dragon wiggled happily, her colors pulsing with contentment. 4 times a day, same times every day. It helps her body know what to expect. We feed hatchlings when they demonstrate hunger, Kelthros explained. They must prove their strength by demanding sustenance. The weak who cannot make their needs known do not survive. Rebecca stared at him. She's a baby. Babies need regular meals whether they can ask for them or not. The concept seemed to genuinely puzzle him. He made notes on his light tablet and floated away, muttering to himself. The next confusion came during playtime. Rebecca had fashioned simple toys for Spark, a rubber ball that bounced, some fabric strips tied in knots, a puzzle box with treats inside. She spent an hour each afternoon playing with Spark, teaching her to chase, to problem solve, to interact. This brought Velrisa herself to observe. The Dragon Emperor materialized in the cargo bay where Rebecca had set up Spark's play area, watching as the little dragon pounced on the ball with clumsy enthusiasm. "What purpose does this serve?" Velrisa asked. Rebecca threw the ball again, and Spark scampered after it, tripping over her own feet. "It's play. It helps her develop coordination, problem-solving skills, and it's good exercise. Plus, it makes her happy." "Happy," Velrisa repeated the word slowly. "Hatchlings are trained for survival. For hunting. For dominance. Not for happiness." "Well, maybe that's the problem," Rebecca said, scooping up Spark as she returned with the ball. "Look at her. She's learning and growing, and she's enjoying it. There's no reason those things have to be separate." Velrisa watched as Spark dropped the ball at Rebecca's feet, then sat back expectantly, her tail wagging like a puppy's. When Rebecca threw it again, Spark's delighted chirp echoed through the bay. For just a moment, Rebecca saw something flicker across the Emperor's face. Longing, maybe. Or regret. But the biggest confusion of all came at night. Tom discovered Velrisa standing outside Rebecca's quarters at 2 a.m. The Dragon Emperor had reduced her form to something almost human-sized, pressed against the door like she was trying to hear through it. "Ah, Your Majesty," Tom said nervously. "Can I help you with something?" Velrisa didn't look at him. "What is she doing in there?" "I detect vocalizations, but they do not match any known language pattern." Tom listened. Through the door came the soft sound of Rebecca's voice, singing. It was an old lullaby, something about stars and dreams. "She's singing. To help Spark sleep." "Singing?" Velrisa said the word like it was completely alien. "Dragons do not sing." "Well, humans do," Tom said carefully. "Especially to children. It soothes them. Helps them feel safe." The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "May I observe?" Tom didn't know what to say. He knocked gently on Rebecca's door and explained the situation. Rebecca, tired and wearing her sleep clothes with Spark curled in her arms, looked at the Dragon Emperor standing in her doorway and sighed. "You want to watch me put her to bed?" Velrisa nodded, looking oddly vulnerable in her reduced form. "Fine. But you have to be quiet." The sight of the Dragon Emperor sitting cross-legged on the floor of a human quarters, watching Rebecca sing a baby dragon to sleep, was something Tom would never forget. Velrisa's burning eyes were fixed on every detail, how Rebecca dimmed the lights, how she rocked Spark gently, how she stroked the little dragon's scales in slow, soothing patterns. When Spark's eyes finally closed and her breathing deepened into sleep, Rebecca carefully placed her in the nest of blankets she'd prepared. She covered her with a soft cloth and whispered, "Good night, little one." Velrisa remained frozen on the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice was different than Tom had ever heard it. Soft. Broken, almost. "I never held my hatchlings. Not like that. It is not done. We guard them, provide for them, train them. But we do not hold them." Rebecca looked at the ancient being sitting on her floor and felt an unexpected wave of sympathy. "That must have been lonely. For you and for them." "I ruled an empire," Velrisa said. "I commanded fleets. I shaped the fate of worlds. I thought I had everything." She looked at Spark, sleeping peacefully. "I did not know what I was missing." Over the following days, something shifted. Velrisa came to observe more frequently, but her questions changed. She no longer asked about the technical aspects of how the quantum field worked or what nutrients Spark required. She asked softer questions. "Why do you talk to her constantly, even when she cannot understand?" "Because babies learn language by hearing it, and they need to know someone is there." "Why do you maintain physical contact so often?" "Because touch tells her she's safe and loved." "Why do you smile at her when she succeeds at small tasks?" "Because positive reinforcement builds confidence and encourages learning." The other dragons noticed their emperor's growing interest. Some were confused. Others were concerned. But none dared to question her directly. Lisa pulled Rebecca aside one evening. "Do you realize what's happening? You're not just teaching them about childcare. You're teaching them about emotions. About connection. Things they've apparently bred out of themselves over millions of years." Rebecca watched through the viewport as Velrisa's massive flagship drifted alongside their tiny vessel. Maybe they didn't breed it out. Maybe they just forgot. And maybe, just maybe, they want to remember. That night, Velrisa asked if she could try holding Spark. Just for a moment. Rebecca agreed, carefully transferring the sleepy dragon to the Emperor's clawed hands. Velrisa held her own offspring as if she were made of glass, terrified and amazed in equal measure. Spock yawned, showing tiny teeth, and snuggled into the Emperor's palm without fear. Velrisa's hands trembled. She is so small. So fragile. How do you bear the constant fear of failing her? Rebecca smiled sadly. You don't bear it. You just love her anyway. That's what being a parent means. The Dragon Emperor held her daughter for nearly an hour, learning the weight of her, the warmth of her, the trust in her peaceful sleep. And when she finally handed Spock back, there were traces of moisture on her scaled cheeks. Dragons, apparently, could cry after all. The turning point came on the 23rd day of their strange arrangement. Rebecca woke up to find Velrisa already in her quarters, sitting on the floor beside Spock's nest. The Dragon Emperor hadn't manifested in her overwhelming cosmic form. Instead, she appeared almost human-sized, her scales dimmed to a soft glow that didn't hurt to look at. Spock was awake, playing with one of her fabric toys, completely comfortable with Velrisa's presence. It was startling how much had changed in just 3 weeks. We need to talk, Velrisa said without looking up from Spock. About what happens next. Rebecca's stomach tightened. She'd known this conversation was coming. You're taking her back. No. Velrisa finally looked at her, and Rebecca was surprised to see conflict in those ancient eyes. That is the problem. I cannot take her back. But neither can I simply leave her with you. Rebecca sat down on her bunk, confused. I don't understand. Velrisa watched Spock roll onto her back, batting at the toy with her small claws. I have ruled 17 star systems for 3,000 years. I have birthed 71 clutches across my lifetime. I have raised hundreds of offspring who went on to become warriors, scholars, fleet commanders. I thought I understood what it meant to be a mother. She paused, and her voice dropped lower. But watching you these past weeks, I have realized something that shames me deeply. I was never a mother. I was a creator. A commander. A trainer of weapons. But not a mother. Rebecca didn't know what to say to that. You give her something I never knew how to provide, Velrisa continued. Patience without judgment. Affection without conditions. You see her not as a flawed tool to be discarded, but as a person deserving of love simply because she exists. The Emperor's clawed hand reached out, gently touching Spock's head. The little dragon chirped happily. She thrives under your care in ways my offspring never did under mine. So what are you saying? Rebecca asked carefully. Velrisa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of a decision that clearly hadn't come easily. I am saying that you have taught me more in 3 weeks than I learned in 3 millennia. And I am saying that I was wrong. She looked directly at Rebecca. I cannot give Spock what you can. My nature, my culture, my very being is not designed for the kind of nurturing she needs. Rebecca felt her heart sink. Then why can't you just let me keep her? Because, Velrisa said gently, you cannot give her what she will need when she matures. As she grows, her power will expand. She will phase through dimensions, manipulate reality itself, command forces that could tear your ship apart without meaning to. She will need guidance from someone who understands that power. Someone who has lived with it. The logic made sense, but Rebecca felt tears pricking at her eyes. So we're back where we started. You take her, and I lose another daughter. No, Velrisa said firmly. That is not what I am proposing. She shifted her position, and for the first time, Rebecca saw uncertainty in the Dragon Emperor's body language. I am proposing something that has never been done in the entire history of my species. Something my advisors think is madness. Something that terrifies me more than any battle I have ever fought. What? Rebecca whispered. Velrisa took a deep breath, which looked strange on a dragon. I am asking if you would allow me to learn from you. To be present as Spock grows. To let me observe and participate in her raising, so that I might understand what I failed to give my other children. I am asking if we could raise her together. Rebecca blinked. Of all the things she'd expected, this wasn't it. Together? You and me? I know it sounds impossible, Velrisa said quickly. We are completely different species. Our lifespans do not match. Your understanding of the universe and mine are fundamentally incompatible in many ways. But Spock herself is impossible. She exists between states, between worlds. Perhaps she needs parents who are equally impossible together. Tom's voice came from the doorway, making them both jump. She's been standing out here for an hour, Captain. Working up the courage to ask you. He looked at Velrisa with something like sympathy. I've never seen anything like it. The most powerful being in known space, nervous about asking a human for parenting advice. Velrisa didn't deny it. I have destroyed planets. I have ended civilizations that threatened galactic stability. I have made decisions that affected trillions of lives. But asking for help, admitting weakness, accepting that I need to change, this is harder than all of that combined. Rebecca looked down at Spark, who had abandoned her toy and was now looking between the two adults with her 6 curious eyes. The little dragon seemed to sense the importance of the moment. She crawled over to Rebecca, then turned and crawled to Velrisa, then back again. Like she was trying to connect them. What would this even look like? Rebecca asked. Practically speaking, how would this work? Velrisa seemed relieved that Rebecca hadn't immediately refused. Your ship would be escorted to the heart of the Crimson Expanse. You and your crew would be given quarters in the Imperial Palace. Spark would live with you, primarily under your care. But I would be present daily. I would learn your methods. I would participate in her raising. And when the time comes for her to learn dragon abilities, dragon history, dragon culture, I would teach those things. You want me to move to dragon space, Rebecca said slowly. Leave human territory. Live among dragons. I know what I am asking, Velrisa said. I am asking you to give up your freedom, your mission, your life as you know it. I am asking you to trust me, despite everything. I am asking you to help me become something I have never been. Lisa appeared behind Tom in the doorway. Captain, can I say something? When Rebecca nodded, she continued. I've been monitoring the dragon networks. This is causing chaos in their empire. Half the nobility thinks Velrisa has gone insane. The other half is quietly fascinated. If this works, if you can actually teach dragons about emotional connection and compassionate parenting, you won't just be helping Spark. You'll be changing an entire civilization. No pressure, Tom muttered. Rebecca picked up Spark, holding her close. The little dragon purred, that strange dimensional sound that had become so familiar. And if I say no? If I just want to keep her and go back to human space? Velrisa's expression was unreadable. Then I would let you go. I would not stop you. But Spark would grow without understanding her heritage, her abilities, her nature. She would be isolated from her own kind. And I would lose the chance to learn from the only person who has ever shown me what I have been missing. It was emotional blackmail, in a way. But it was also honest. Rebecca could see the truth in Velrisa's eyes. The Emperor wasn't demanding. She was asking. Pleading, even. Can I have time to think about it? Rebecca asked. And talk to my crew? Of course, Velrisa said. She stood, her form rippling slightly. Take all the time you need. I have waited 3,000 years to understand this feeling. I can wait a little longer. Before she faded away, she reached out one more time to touch Spark's head. The little dragon leaned into the touch, and Velrisa's voice cracked. Whatever you decide, thank you. For showing me that even emperors have much to learn. For teaching me that strength without compassion is just cruelty with power. Then she was gone, and Rebecca was left holding Spark, staring at the space where the Dragon Emperor had been, wondering how her simple rescue mission had turned into a choice that could reshape the galaxy. Rebecca called a crew meeting in the mess hall 2 hours later. The 7 people who made up the Wanderer's small team gathered around the table. Tom, Lisa, their navigator Kyle Chen, medical officer Dr. Patricia Rowe, communications specialist David Okafor, and 2 junior engineers, Ashley Miller and James Kowalski. They'd all heard what Velrisa had proposed, and they all had opinions. It's insane, Kyle said immediately. We'd be giving up everything. Our contracts, our families back home, our entire lives. To go live with dragons who, let's be honest, still kind of terrify me. Same, Ashley agreed. I mean, I've gotten used to them being around, but living in the middle of their empire? That's different. But Patricia leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Can I play devil's advocate for a moment? We're explorers. We signed up to see things no human has ever seen, to go places no one else has gone. Living in the Dragon Empire, being part of this unprecedented arrangement, that's the opportunity of a lifetime from a research standpoint alone. It's not just research though, David added quietly. It's raising a child. That's not a scientific experiment. That's a commitment. A long-term, life-changing commitment. Everyone looked at Rebecca. She sat with Spark in her lap, the little dragon dozing peacefully, unaware that her future was being decided. I know what I'm asking of all of you, Rebecca said. If I accept Velrisa's offer, you'd all be coming with me. Your lives would change completely. So I need to know honestly, what do you all think? Not about the politics or the science. About this. She gestured to Spock. About whether this is the right thing to do for her. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Tom spoke up, surprising everyone. I've been thinking about this all morning. And I keep coming back to something my grandmother used to say. She raised 6 kids on a colony world with barely any resources. She'd say, it takes a village to raise a child, but sometimes it takes a village to heal a broken world too. He looked around at the crew. That's what we'd be doing, right? Not just raising Spock, but helping heal this disconnect the dragons have with their own emotions. Teaching them something they forgot. That's bigger than any of us. Lisa nodded slowly. I've been analyzing the dragon communication networks. Tom's right. This is already causing ripples. Younger dragons are questioning the old ways. Some are asking why they feel so disconnected from their own offspring. If this succeeds, we wouldn't just be changing one life. We'd be changing millions. But at what cost? Kyle insisted. Rebecca, you'd essentially be co-parenting with an immortal dragon empress. What happens when Spock grows up? What happens when you get old and Velrisa doesn't? What happens if dragons and humans go to war someday? Rebecca had thought about all of this. I don't have good answers to those questions. This is uncharted territory. But here's what I do know. She stroked Spock's scales gently. 3 weeks ago, I found a dying baby and couldn't walk away. If I walk away now, if I take her back to human space and cut her off from her heritage, I'm not doing what's best for her. I'm doing what's comfortable for me. And if Velrisa reverts to her old ways? Ashley asked. If this is all some manipulation? Then we deal with it, Rebecca said firmly. But I don't think it is. I've watched her these past weeks. The way she looks at Spock now compared to when she first arrived, it's completely different. She's learning. She's changing. And that matters. Patricia spoke up again. I vote we do it. Not just for the science, but because it's the right thing to do. We're being given a chance to bridge 2 civilizations, to show that cooperation and understanding can overcome even the deepest differences. That's worth the risk. One by one, the crew members voiced their agreement. Some were more hesitant than others, but they all understood the significance of what they were being offered. They were explorers, after all. This was just a different kind of exploration. When Rebecca informed Velrisa of their decision, the Dragon Emperor materialized in the cargo bay where the crew had gathered. She looked different somehow, less imposing, more present. More real. You will come? Velrisa asked, and there was genuine surprise in her voice. All of you? We're a package deal, Rebecca said, holding Spock. If you want to learn how to be a mother, you should probably also learn that it really does take a village. What happened next shocked everyone. Velrisa's form shimmered, and she dropped to one knee, bringing herself down to Rebecca's eye level. It was a gesture of respect, of equality, something no dragon had ever shown to a human before. Thank you, Velrisa said simply. I will not waste this gift you are giving me. The journey to the heart of the Crimson Expanse took 5 days. The Wanderer traveled in the center of the dragon fleet, protected and honored rather than imprisoned. During the journey, more dragons came to observe, to ask questions, to understand what their emperor was doing. Some were hostile. A dragon named Corthanis confronted Velrisa directly, demanding to know why she was debasing herself before mammals. Velrisa's response was measured but firm. I am not debasing myself. I am elevating myself by learning what I did not know. If you cannot see the difference, that is your limitation, not mine. Others were curious. Younger dragons especially seemed fascinated by the concept of emotional bonding with offspring. They asked Rebecca endless questions about human family structures, about love, about why humans sang to their children and told them stories. When they finally arrived at the Imperial Palace, Rebecca was stunned. It wasn't just a building. It was a living structure, grown from some kind of crystalline material that pulsed with energy. It floated above a planet of swirling red and gold clouds, tethered by beams of light. The quarters provided for the human crew were luxurious beyond anything they'd ever experienced. But Rebecca noticed something interesting. Her rooms were connected directly to Velrisa's personal chambers by a shared common area. The Emperor hadn't placed them in guest quarters. She'd integrated them into her own living space. That first night in their new home, Rebecca set up Spock's sleeping nest in the common area between the 2 chambers. Velrisa appeared as Rebecca was singing Spock to sleep, and without asking, she sat down on the floor nearby. Rebecca continued singing, and Velrisa listened, her ancient eyes closed, learning the melody. When Spark finally fell asleep, Velrisa spoke quietly. "Will you teach me that song?" Rebecca smiled. "Of course. But you should know, you're going to feel really silly at first. Singing lullabies isn't exactly dignified." "I have been dignified for 3,000 years, Velrisa said softly. "Dignity did not make me happy. Dignity did not make my children love me. Perhaps it is time to try something else." So Rebecca taught the Dragon Emperor a human lullaby, there in the dim light of the common room, with a sleeping dragon baby between them. Velrisa's voice was surprisingly beautiful once she got over her self-consciousness, resonant and deep and filled with emotion she'd never allowed herself to express before. When they finished, Velrisa looked at Spark, then at Rebecca. "I do not know how to thank you properly. In dragon culture, we pay debts with treasures, with territory, with power. But none of that seems appropriate here." Rebecca thought for a moment. "Then just promise me this. Promise that you'll always try. That even when it's hard, even when you don't understand, even when your instincts tell you to be cold and distant, you'll try to be warm instead. For her." Velrisa reached out and gently touched Spark's sleeping form. "I promise. On my honor, on my throne, on everything I am. I will try." And she did. Over the months and years that followed, the galaxy watched in amazement as the Dragon Emperor learned to be a mother. She made mistakes, of course. There were days when her old instincts took over, when she defaulted to commands instead of requests, to training instead of teaching. But Rebecca was always there to gently redirect her, to show her another way. Spark grew strong and happy, thriving under the combined care of a human who gave her unconditional love and a dragon who taught her to harness her unique abilities. Her shifting nature, once seen as a fatal flaw, became her greatest strength. She could phase through dimensions at will, existing in multiple states simultaneously, bridging worlds that others couldn't even perceive. More importantly, she grew up knowing she was loved by both her mothers. That she belonged to two worlds and was rejected by neither. The impact rippled outward. Other dragons began questioning their traditional approaches to raising hatchlings. Some sought out Rebecca's advice. A few even asked if they could observe her methods. Slowly, gradually, dragon culture began to shift. Not abandoning their strength or their power, but adding something they'd lost along the way, compassion. Years later, when Spark was nearly fully grown and beginning to explore the galaxy on her own, she returned to the palace one evening to find both her mothers sitting together, watching the sunset over the red-gold clouds. Rebecca was older now, gray streaking her hair, but still vibrant. Velrisa was unchanged, eternal. "Thank you," Spark said, settling between them. "Both of you. For showing the universe that family isn't about being the same. It's about choosing to love each other anyway." Velrisa placed a claw gently on Spark's head. Rebecca took her hand. And the three of them sat together, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The Dragon Emperor had learned to murmur words of love. And in doing so, she'd helped change the galaxy forever. All because one human couldn't walk away from a dying child, and one ancient empress finally learned that admitting you were wrong was the first step toward becoming something better.